The US State Department, the United Nations, the European Union, and several international rights bodies have condemned the recent violence and called for an investigation. The initial protests were against a government job quota system, but after the crackdown that followed, killed nearly 200 people and injured thousands more. Many are now demanding accountability. The capital city, Dhaka, remains calm but tense after days of student protest and clash with heavy presence of security forces. Stories of personal tragedies are also slowly starting to emerge.
A detective team picked me up, blindfolded me, and then later took me to a room in a building and interrogated me about the student protests and their strategies. They also mentally and physically tortured me until I became senseless.
Last Saturday, 25-year-old college student Mominul Islam, who, according to his family, was not involved in any protest, was caught in the middle and shot in the chest by police in the Mirpur area of Dhaka.
I am a poor person and lost my only son to bullets. I hope no family goes through this.
It's now not enough. Just accept our quota demand. Those who were killed, how they were killed, and why they were killed must be accounted for first, and the government must answer this.
The government blames the opposition and its allies for orchestrating the recent violence. Many government and public properties were burned and damaged, including Metro Rail and Bangladesh State Television Center.
Today, as per the call of duty, the police force has stood up to protect the life and security of the people, government and public properties. Instead, what we saw is that the police forces themselves came under brutal attack.
Many are calling on the government to hold an investigation and provide justice to the families of those who have been killed. Tanvir Chaudhary, Al Jazeera, Dhaka.
Well, the United Nations has demanded an investigation of the Bangladeshi government's crackdown on student protests. Violent clashes that killed at least 150 people were sparked during student demonstrations against quotas on government jobs. So those quotas have since been mostly scrapped. The protest movement is now calling on a number of government ministers to stand down. And earlier, we spoke to the Bangladeshi Minister for Information and Broadcasting, Muhammad Ali Arafat. He said third-party actors should be held responsible for the violence and not the government.
We're not talking about the students. We're not referring to the students to be the terrorists and anarchists. It is the third party, those who intruded into this movement and started doing all this. Who do you think indulged into the jailbreak and help 820 prisoners to escape? Who do you think is invading into the jail and then loot the firearms?
Please tell us who do you think that is? Please
get 160 the prison staff hostage.
Please help us with who you are accusing here.
All those things had happened here. So this is the third party, all the extremists and the terrorists, those who have the track record of doing all of this even in the past, back in 2015, 2013, and if you go back to the track record and look at it, you'll find out.
We do not know ultimately what these third-party groups were doing or what they were planning. We cannot substantiate any of that independently, but it is, at the end of the day, the government's responsibility for state security. And you must agree that something very seriously went wrong here.
No, hold on. Of course, we as a government, of course it is our responsibility to bring back the peace. And we did everything that we need to do to bring back the peace. We have to do it because it's our responsibility to protect the lives of the people. Therefore, we tried our best to diffuse the tension as much as possible. We tried our best to de-escalate the tension so that we can quickly bring back the peace. But because of the, some people who are trying to add fuel to the fire, are trying to create a situation where they can, take advantage of it and topple the government, they went to that extent, we believe, and it is getting more obvious now.
So, Mr. Arafat,
therefore, it made it difficult for us.
Mr. Arafat, we agree then that it is the government's ultimate responsibility to maintain state security. That clearly has, in many ways, crumbled over the past couple of weeks. Who bears the responsibility? Surely the buck stops with the Prime Minister, no? Should she resign?
I mean, she should resign for protecting the people. So for helping the people, protecting the people, trying to bring back the peace, why on earth the Prime Minister should resign for that?
Well, you can watch our full interview with the Bangladeshi Minister for Information and Broadcasting on Talk to Al Jazeera. That's later on Thursday at 19:30 GMT. And we'll now speak to Irene Khan, who's the UN Special Rapporteur on the freedom of opinion and expression. She's joining us from Geneva. Welcome to Al Jazeera, ma'am. First, I'd like you to comment on what the Minister of Information and Broadcasting of Bangladesh had to say when he said it's not the government that is responsible for the violence. It's, in fact, third-party actors.
Well, it sounds to me like disinformation rather than information. Of course, the government is responsible for security, and the government has been handling this very badly. There has been a violent crackdown with police and military on the ground. Government ministers have made inflammatory statements while peaceful protests were going on, asking government-affiliated groups to attack the students, which then happened. So it's a very bloody, horrible mess now. And the government has to restore security, but they have to restore it keeping in mind the human rights of the people involved. That's what we are asking for in our press release. Yeah. We are also asking...
Yeah, here it is. Yeah. I have your press release right in front of me, and you've added your name along with a number of experts. As you just said, you're calling for an immediate end to the violent crackdown, as you describe it, and full accountability for human rights violations. On that issue of accountability, how do you see that happening? What are you calling for? What are the steps that need to be taken?
Well, given all the broken promises that this government has made on human rights, the false assurances that have been given, and the wrong information that is being floated now, there is no trust in the government. People don't trust it. It's very obvious. And we are calling for an independent, impartial, thorough investigation into what has happened. The government is blaming other people. Others are blaming the government. We need a full, impartial investigation. But since there is no trust in the government, it has to be done with the international community. We are calling on the government to invite the UN to conduct such an investigation, to find out what went wrong, to take responsibility, and to hold the perpetrators to account.
And just on that call, have you received a response from the Bangladeshi government yet?
No, we have provided this statement to them as well. And this morning, the High Commissioner for Human Rights himself has also put out a press release where he too is offering his services, the UN services, and we are waiting for an answer from the government.
From what you've seen, ma'am, if you can just put this into context for us and tell us, in your opinion, to what extent has there been a decline or not of human rights in Bangladesh recently?
Well, there's been a disastrous decline. This is not something that just suddenly popped up. For years, institutions are being undermined. There have been other clashes in the past. We've seen an election that a lot of people have called was rigged. There's a great deal of dissatisfaction, discontent on the ground with corruption, mismanagement, with the police law enforcement, for example, regular stories of torture. Even now, we are hearing stories from people about journalists being threatened for reporting, about students disappearing, about people turning up and just picking up whoever they suspect and taking them away, torturing them, leaving them out. Sometimes they're disappearing. That means they're killed. So in this kind of lawless situation, the country cannot continue. Right. Bangladesh was described as a development miracle. Where has that miracle gone? It's gone down this drain of human rights disasters. And now we are asking the government, one way forward is through this impartial, independent, thorough investigation with the help of the United Nations or the international community.
Irene Khan, the UN Special Rapporteur on the freedom of opinion and expression, thank you for speaking to us from Geneva.
Thank you.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.